Good evening, everybody. I'd like to bring the Stockbridge Board of Selectmen meeting for August 12th, 2021 to order at 6:30 p.m. So hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We have a fairly quick agenda, I hope, this evening. First is lake updates. And I suppose the most significant to many people is going to be that the harvester is now at the lake. And the conveyor is at the boat ramp, thanks to our highway department. And harvesting will begin tomorrow morning. We're very fortunate to have now both Michael Nathan and Chuck Corer available to run the harvester. So we will begin tomorrow morning.
Hallelujah.
You two have any comments about this?
Great.
Questions? Okay. We do have the GPS tracking unit, so that will be there in the morning.
Good. And is that all loaded?
It is in the process of being loaded, and basically, I mean, one thing I'd like to mention in having a lot of conversations about this, this is a navigation device, and that's primarily what we're using it for, navigation and tracking. And so in setting up routes, I have all the GPS coordinates and I've started to set it up. But the big question was, how do we break apart different segments in terms of, you can set routes, you can create routes. So with all these data points, we can create routes, we can avoid the areas that we can't go into. But logically, because you have to unload the weeds from the harvester, that we parse out and we make different routes. So that's in the process. You know, I think it's going to be, there's going to be some learning curve for sure in using this. And we may have to modify what our routes are.
And can you just take a second and explain to them why the GPS was necessary?
The GPS was necessary because it's a requirement of NHESP, National Heritage. So they are saying, Natural Heritage, they're saying that they want us to track, to have GPS tracking of where we are actually harvesting. So that's the reason we have it. We're fine. We didn't need a transducer for sonar because it's useless on a weed harvester. So it came quickly and it's all set. Thanks to Hugh, our highway superintendent, he actually took the unit and rather than hardwiring it to the battery, he actually made it so that we can plug it into the charger, i.e. cigarette lighter that's in the unit. That way.
There's a cigarette lighter on the harvester?
Do you want to speak to this and explain what you did? Why don't you come on up?
Yeah, there's a 12-volt cigarette lighter kind of adapter. And we used an accessory plug for that. We wired that to the harness of the GPS. And we also have a, outlet 12-volt converter so that if they have to do any route changes, they can take it to the office or wherever they want to go and utilize it that way too. So they don't have to sit on the harvester to program it and map it out. You know, some of this stuff can be done, off harvester if need be.
And is there going to be a training session on the GPS? Because
There's not a whole lot to.
there is, okay.
But they got to stay out of those two areas.
GPS, I mean, this thing, basically what it does when you put in waypoints with GPS coordinates, basically you can create a route and it creates a magenta line. So it creates a route that you basically are going to, you've got the map in front of you. This GPS unit is loaded with the US lakes, all the maps. So you're looking at a map, you're looking at Stockbridge Bowl, you're seeing where you are and you are following a line. So basically, it's not difficult.
Did they have you put the buoys out?
They have put the buoys out. Gary
so-
Kleinerman got the buoys out
So
for
at least
those
if they get off
protected
track, they
areas.
go.
Well,
close.
they better not get off track. I'm making sure I'm doing the routes so that
Yeah.
we're nowhere close to
Yeah.
anywhere we're not supposed to be, so. But the other great thing about that, having that flexibility, is we can remove that GPS unit, which obviously is a fairly expensive piece of equipment, and then lock it up at night.
Yeah.
Take it back to
Oh, it
highway
can't be
garage
done
and
there.
it'll be
It'll be
locked
gone.
up in the office.
And,
So we can secure it.
okay. All right, good. Regarding the uncertainty around the polygons they have to be avoided. Do you want it, we're not changing our plans until we're instructed to by DEP, correct?
Correct.
All right. So that just has to do with, we have certain areas that we're not supposed to harvest because of the herbicide test next year, potentially. And those areas may need to change because in the last 2 years, there hasn't been enough milfoil in some of them to perform the test, including this year. And so
That's a good thing.
Well, that will be a discussion that we will have with the SBA
Yes, that's
in a
correct.
joint session. So we received the formal request today from SBA
Yep.
to schedule a joint meeting with the Conservation Commission and
Yep, I saw that.
the Select Board. So that will happen, and until that time, I think we don't have any decision at this point.
Okay.
Let's see. The next thing that I want to mention is there was some discussion about the water chestnut, that they were located last year, and I think it's right pretty much in the beginning of the channel.
Yeah, that's correct. I'm left.
And so anyway, to do hand pulling, it does require an RDA technically. And I did talk with Donna Brewer about this last year, actually, and I talked with Ron Brewer this morning about this. So he will be getting an RDA in place for the town of Stockbridge. So the town can have those weeds, the invasive water chestnuts, hand pulled. And apparently Michael Canales had a conversation with him, I guess, yesterday. And Michael was considering hiring a firm to just come in and just
Do it, yeah.
do it. So I don't know how the two of you feel about that.
Yeah, get it done.
Get it done.
Okay, well, I agree. So-
And, I saw Pat Kennelly took the time to write us
Yes.
about what my position is. I have no expertise in this. I want Michael and whoever knows what they're doing to figure out how to get rid of it as soon as possible.
Right, so at any rate,
Yeah.
although I wanted to thank Pat for her offer, and when I responded to Pat, when she offered, can I get volunteers together to help? I let her know anyone without any kind of permission whatsoever can go and pick up, and if you can identify those seed pods, you can actually take the seed pods if they're floating in the water. That doesn't require permission, like
Right.
pulling of plants. So we'll handle the plants, but anyone who is out on the lake, and if you can identify these plants, the seed pods, please do. And let me see if I can share my screen. Let me see if I can find the picture. I'll show you what these pods look like. All right, is that screen sharing that file? No. I've got it up.
How big is it?
Well, it's not coming up on screen share. At any rate, you can go out and just search on Google Trapanatans, Trapanatans, and you will see what they look like. It's like a real horny looking thing. It's a really ugly looking thing. It's going to be unmistakable. But at any rate, and quite frankly, the SBA is very aware of it.
Yeah, good.
And so she actually had information and looked up information about hand pulling. So I'm sure that Pat will be sharing that with their members, and that's how they can probably best help. Dredging update. I would prefer to talk about dredging basically when we can schedule it on an agenda for a future meeting so that both Greg Wellenkamp and Michael Nathan can be here.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll just kind of defer that for a future meeting so we can get a full report on what the status is. There was a state meeting at the boat ramp with Gary Kleinerman, our harbor master, myself, because Michael Canales was not working that day, and Mark Faber, our tree warden. And generally, we discussed overall the drainage and compaction issues that we have down there. And it was pretty much agreed that that's an engineering project. We need to look at that entire area and come up with a good design for drainage. And that includes, Gary wanting to pave more, On the other hand, if you encompass the entire area and look at it as a whole, because everything is draining towards the lake right now, that's probably the way to go. Now, monies are available and there is a reimbursement program. And so right now, we're just waiting to hear back from Doug Cameron of DCR about the specific procedure. He said he would be getting back to Michael Canales about the specific procedure for getting, authorization, prior authorization, basically for reimbursement. But we are on their list.
Good.
We both, Gary and I both said, yep, and he said, well, I have a list of 300 lakes that I'm dealing with.
Well, at least on the list.
At any rate, so we were like, put us on the list.
And does that include figuring out, what did Mark or the powers that be, the experts that be, think about the erosion under those trees?
Well, there's issues around that in terms of conservation. One thing is you can't fill it in unless you can compensate in another area close by, and he didn't think that was possible. However, the trees are very healthy right now. Mark noted a couple of things. There's some crossed branches that he was concerned about, and he wants to do some minor trimming on a couple of those trees. And then there is a big huge area of erosion, kind of horseshoe shaped.
Yeah.
Right by those trees, right in front of him. And the one thing that Mark had mentioned is he said, look, I think we could probably put in some topsoil first for the health of the roots, to protect the roots, and then use like number 6 stone. And then there was discussion about topping it off possibly with gravel, just to dissuade people from walking on there, rather than putting up signs and saying, do not do this, do not do that.
Right.
Let's just dissuade people, send them in a different direction. Another discussion that we had was also the possibility of adding a canoe kayak, a boat
The
top
launchers, right.
launch.
Yeah.
And that would be probably the best spot that was discussed was just to the left of the boat ramp.
Yeah.
So that was discussed as well. So as I said.
What about an actual dock? Did you guys have a chance to talk about that?
We did, we discussed it, and he gave a couple of examples, and now if my memory serves me, he gave us a couple of town examples. And of course, I won't be able to remember them right now. But he's got a couple of examples around the state where they've done this type of implementation, installation of that kind of a.
Because that's, I think, the priority of the people who fish there. I've heard maybe from 10 times since Dan came in
Right.
and talked to us. He called, they really want a dock to help launch the boats.
Yeah, so, I mean, that was all discussed and he went into some detail about it and, gave us a couple of examples that we could look at, but certainly, we can get what those examples are. And I was thinking about doing a field trip,
Okay.
to look at one or two that are relatively close by.
Okay.
But yeah, all that was discussed. And so, but the main thing is doing good drainage engineering.
Right.
Doing a good plan. So
Okay.
that's
Good.
where we stand with that one. And that's basically it for lake updates.
And then one other question on that, the beach, do we have any a status report maybe just on what's going on with the beach? And, I know that we talked about there's some parking engineering that got approved and,
Right, well, that's all done. I mean, design is done and Hugh can speak to that as well, because Highway Department will be working on it. And I think we've mentioned this before.
Yeah, the fall.
They'll be doing it in the fall after the summer season is
Okay,
over.
all right, good.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. Thank you. Sounds great.
Okay, next on our agenda, Housing Trust Fund discussion. So
Is Jay on?
I do not see him.
Well, okay, I can do it.
Well, what specifically is the procedure? What are the next steps, Patrick, for?
Well, I think that we might have gotten them a little bit backward. I think that we were supposed to, we got a draft from our town council about maybe 10 months ago of a sample housing trust fund that she had produced for one of our other clients. So we looked at that and there's a couple of fill in the blanks around decisions we need to make around sort of like how they're structured. But generally, it's the sort of same sort of thing, I think, for any town that wants to do it. So it's my understanding we've appropriated the, 100,000 at town meeting. And now we have to sort of, backstop and fill in what this might look like. So, I think it's just a matter of maybe setting up a committee to help make recommendations to our board as to what those fill in the blank parameters look like. I think that Jay should head it. This has been his project. And then from there, that might be the initial folks that we appoint to the trust fund, which I believe will be an independent group. It is sort of an entity once it's formed, that could, sort of form the basis for the first group that actually plays the role once it's formed.
Okay.
So, yeah, I know that, personally, I know that I've heard from Jay, we talked to Bill Boat and he suggested Nancy, Socio.
Yes.
Heard from Mark Mills. I expressed an interest in being on it if you guys, want. I was involved obviously with Jay in writing the proposal for town meeting. And the fifth person was, is there a fifth?
That's 4 so far.
Yeah, I know. There was a fifth that I thought that, Jay, Nancy, I don't know. I know that those 4 have expressed interest.
Okay,
So,
yeah, because we actually asked if anyone would be interested in
Yeah, that's
serving on
right.
that committee in our last meeting. So it's good to know that some people are interested.
So if
Anything else?
we could do that today, and then really, I think most of it's going to be, Jay and, I think we start off having a quick conversation with Donna, just wondering like kind of what are the things we should be talking about as a group, debate those, come up with a set of recommendations, and then I think that we'll go through a similar process and just get the paperwork done.
Okay. I'm not sure that we have a need to take a vote on this tonight, and
No, I
that's
don't
really
need
not on the
We're
agenda.
gonna
So
need them to officially give us something to
officially express interest.
interest, and then we can vote them in.
Okay, I can forward them to you.
And there may be others. There may
I mean, Bill is already, Nancy's already, and the planning board's already weighed in. Mark Mills sent me an email, and,
I'll give him the mic and he'll.
They all
make
need to
up my
come
stuff, and
to all
Okay.
the selectmen.
all right, got
then
it.
we'll
Town
vote
administrator.
on the
Yeah.
complete list.
Okay,
That's
sounds good.
Somebody else wants to,
Yeah, so that's what we're
Go for
doing,
it.
is that anybody else wants,
Thanks.
yeah, because we got
help
to
with the
put it out to
same.
the public.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent.
Perfect.
Okay. All right, moving
you?
on.
You're the only one out there, so we got to talk to
More people need to come. So next on the agenda is Regional School District Planning Board Report. And that's
Can you pull
Patrick.
up that website that we talked about?
Well, let's hope it'll share. I thought I was sharing, and then I wasn't. Right there. There it is.
All right.
There it is.
Okay. All right, so, we've got a situation where the enrollment in South County between Berkshire Hills and South Berkshire, between 2010 and 2030 is literally dropping by half. So add to that the fact that we've got tremendous investment requirements in Monument Mountain. And we've got a situation where there's a number of folks across all 8 of the towns in this grouping that want to make sure that we can have the best schools possible with the challenge of, lower enrollment. And so all 8 towns have 3 volunteers each who have gotten together to do this really comprehensive plan to take a look at 3 different options for merging the school districts. It might be just merging administration. It might be a K through 12 merger. It might be just a high school merger. But the idea is to basically, try to, maintain and improve curriculum while potentially seeing some savings. And so if you go to this website, 8towns.org, you can read about all of the committee's minutes. You can read about all the plans. You can read in detail about what those 3 options are going to be presented. The presentation is going to be in early 2022 to the 8 select boards to to start a discussion about whether or not we look at moving these. And it's been really, really interesting to a lot of great expertise. We just hired a guy named Jake Epperwine, who's with the Berkshire County sort of some kind of consolidation group. But he's basically facilitating and leading the group now. And it's, I think there's 5 or 6 subgroups. I'm on 2 of them, and then we meet once a month. These are all public meetings, just like our meetings here in town. And so if you go to this 8towns.org, you can actually see the agenda, participate. We still have over 110 children going K through 12 here. And so both, folks who went to Monument Mountain or went to Berkshire Hills schools, or folks who currently have children or are thinking about having a family here. This is all really relevant. And if you want to engage with it, certainly there is a welcome place for people to participate in these meetings. And I just wanted to kind of update people as to what's going on there. But I think the big part of this is come 6-8 months from now, there's going to be a fairly significant set of options that we present to us and the other 7 select boards about what the next steps are. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any questions?
No, good.
Any questions from the public? Okay, hearing none. Next item on the agenda is funding for Conservation Commission performance standards.
Michael suggested we table that for a week. He's trying to get some budget information.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. is
okay.
We're still waiting for that information, but
Yeah.
basically it falls outside of our retainer agreement.
Yeah.
So we just need to know what the cost is.
We did get a document from Donna that is going to be very helpful related to, we came up with a draft of what some of the thoughts that we had on that. And she came back with a document 5 times longer, which is, so we're going to have to take a look at it and then figure that out. Lisa, I saw you on the call. If you don't have that yet, I'll make sure I forward it to you when I get home. Thanks.
Okay. Next on the agenda, illegal trash dumping at the transfer station. And this has come up recently. It does create some significant problems, and Hugh can speak to it, but I know that in talking with Ralph, we have had people going in after hours, walking their trash in, getting in regardless.
How did they get in?
You walk in, you can go in the second,
let's not tell them how.
the
Okay.
second driveway.
All right.
You can pull in and they have blocked off usually with a vehicle. So you can't drive your car all the way in, but you can pull your trash out of your car and carry those bags over and dump them. I'll let you speak to this in a second, but one thing that strikes me, and Chuck and I were both involved in this when we talked about a security gate on the second driveway.
I thought we voted for that.
We did. And so I reminded Mike, and Mike seemed to be under the impression that we had to wait until it was paved. And I said, no, it can be set now. So we do have an estimate for that. And I think that has to be a higher priority.
Yeah.
We have to make sure that we secure it so people are not driving in. That won't necessarily keep them from walking in, however.
Well, don't we have security cameras?
We do have security cameras, but I think signage is going to be key.
Yeah.
You want, we need to get a couple of good signs, which shouldn't take us long and is low cost, in terms of what our specific hours are. Number one, people need to know what the hours of operation are.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. And then also they need to have signage, number one, warning, the area is under surveillance and no trespassing, or dumping outside of hours of operation, something to that effect. But anyway, Hugh can probably talk to Ralph described to me the brilliant closing up procedure you guys have, which is you're spraying it down to repel the bears, right?
Yeah, we spray it down each evening, but then what happens is we actually close the compactor, the ram up to the container, and then we spray it. But people come in after hours and they throw their trash on top of it. And then the bears come and rather sit there with the ammonia, they'll grab it and they'll run, they'll drag it into the woods and they tear it over. So now, first thing in the morning, we've got to, shift gears and clean up a mess because not only is it visually wrong, but it's, hygiene, you don't want people's trash laying around them. We're all putting good effort into cleaning things up,
Yeah.
trying to make it
I've done it.
a nicer environment, so they get shift gears and have to keep backstepping. And it's not a root issue where we don't, unfortunately, we don't want to make people not come, but, we're open 7 days a week, so there ought to be a shift in your schedule to.
I mean, we're open way more than any other town.
Yeah, exactly, so it's not.
That's why I kind of wanted to get that separated.
Right, it's almost something
to
that we
do.
hate to have to enforce if people would just take into consideration what it really does to us, So it's not just a piece of trash, it's an invite of nuisance,
Can we do a motion sensor?
Well, we can with the camera system,
Cameras.
it does track motion and it highlights it, so we can, identify, things,
But we
but.
can't connect that real time to the police station, for example.
Right, but with everybody's schedule and everything going on, we hate to go that route. People would just, be a little more considerate about,
It's
that.
after hours.
The town is
Yeah,
almost
exactly.
5,000
Hours,
people.
they can't be doing
Right.
it.
My guess is 4,995 of them are considerate. We're talking about a handful of people who are being jerks.
But the people that are doing this need to understand that it's creating a public health hazard. It's creating more work for our employees. But the big thing is it's a public health hazard because not only is it strewing trash literally from the dumpster back across all the area that Hugh has done a great job of cleaning up, but it also attracts other animals, including rats, including raccoons, whatever. So it's really a hazard that's being created and unnecessarily because, as Hugh said and Chucky said, we're open 7 days a week. We're more than accommodating in terms of the hours. So we're just hoping that people hear this and understand, and please don't do it, but we will be getting signage and we.
But if they continue to do it, are we going to enforce it?
Yes,
Yes,
Good.
you have to
but that's why we want to make sure all the signage is in place.
All right.
get the gate up and
You get up and somebody gets in your trash at home and drags it, we have to deal with that every day. So put that in perspective, that's our concern at this point, so.
All right, good.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay. So now, Patrick, you had brought up about us looking at our bylaws. So I thought,
There's 1,000 of them, but yes, okay.
there's 1,000 of them. On the other hand, so we might as well start in terms of just going over
Yeah.
the two that have come up recently. Okay, so the first one is actually, the latest one that was mentioned was
You
Article
want to share it
3.
or can we share it? No. Or we don't need to. I don't think it's.
Well, I can read the whole, it's not very long, so I can read it. I don't want to navigate that, take that much time. Article 3, this is general bylaws. Article 3, the Selectmen, Section 3. It reads, "They shall meet at least once a week for the payment of bills, when the auditor shall meet with them to audit the same, and he shall not audit any bills exceeding the appropriations." So this was written
1960. I know, I heard it.
a long
Explain to
time
them.
ago. So it's not that the select board has meetings every week. It's that we have this responsibility for the weekly warrant. However, there was the,
The act of 1960, Michael explained it, yes.
it is 2016, I believe. It is the Municipal Modernization Act. And under that, and Chuck remembers
we
this.
voted for it, yes.
You voted for
Voted.
it to delegate this task to your town administrator, which is fine. But when your town administrator is not here, that doesn't mean we just don't pay the bills. So it means the selectmen are still responsible for signing off on that.
Right.
So that's basically it. And I can tell you, when I first started and we had no town administrator for Lord knows how many weeks, they were signed by the selectmen.
Right. Yeah, I have a suggestion. I think that one of the ways we can deal with, because, Christine Rasmussen, to her credit, brought up a whole bunch of archaic bylaws that might have been overridden by the state. And it's my understanding that when state law always trumps town law, but so that sometimes it doesn't really mean you have to update them, but nevertheless, anybody reading the bylaws who isn't a lawyer and doesn't know what the state laws are, my thought is we could start footnoting some of these. So we just put a little number, 13 or whatever the order is there next to Article 3, Section 3, and say this was made, this was made irrelevant or whatever by this 2016 act that you're talking about.
It's not irrelevant because there's still this
That's not
responsibility.
my point. My point is we could footnote them with whatever the explanation is.
Right.
That would explain to laymen like me and like the town who might be reading the bylaws to just say, look, other things now have changed since these were written in the 1950s. on
Oh,
this one.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing though, I mean, in this one, just the wording is kind of archaic. And
Yeah, of
apparently it says auditor as opposed to now it's our accountant.
Yeah.
At some point in time, they used to call that person the auditor.
All right.
No, that's a totally separate function now, so it's confusing the
Sure.
way it's worded. But there's still bylaw changes, so it still has to go to annual town meeting.
Not a footnote. A footnote could just simply explain what is archaic about it and how
believe
modern
that.
practices,
Was that?
Doesn't every change have to go into the warrant?
it wouldn't be part of the bylaw though.
I have to check that with town council.
We'd have to, yeah, we'd have to check with Donna.
Just to give people a heads up
It's
so
still
that,
a
you know.
change, it's still a
Yeah.
change to your bylaws, you're still making a modification. So there's that one. And then the other one is the infamous chain link fence.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Chain link and wire mesh fences are prohibited in all but the manufacturing district unless said fence is visually screened from adjacent properties,
Mm-hmm.
including roadways throughout the entire year. Now, this is in the zoning bylaws.
Yeah,
So this, obviously, for any change to happen here,
clearly.
you know, it's got to,
Look, I think that Michael was saying that in other towns that have banned chain link fences, there's carve outs. So, you know, highway can use them and, you know, folks can use them around swimming pools or tennis courts or whatever. I just think that this should be on the list of things we update. Personally, I don't,
Chain link fence changed. I mean, you got colors, you got styles.
yeah, I just don't
Actually,
like,
they could look very nice. But the old days, it was just the old galvanized,
right.
ugly looking.
And one was just noticed that was new that's come up in town
yeah,
in an area. So my other concern about this, in terms of the right to farm, is, okay, let's say I own my 4-point-something acres, all right? And my neighbor owns some acreage, and I'm keeping some animals. And I'm using some kind of wire fence, or I'm using some chain link fence, just because that neighbor can see it. Does that mean I can't have it? Does that mean I
That's
then
right.
also have to do some kind of landscaping to make sure that no one can see it? So
Says like chain link fence.
or wire mesh.
Yeah. so
either one.
Yeah,
Either one.
so
And they're
you
typically
Run
used,
electric wire and you're all set.
it's still a wire fence, isn't it, though?
No, that's
Yeah,
not. Well,
it's a wire fence.
No,
So
look-
I think it's something that probably should be looked at in terms of when it was written, it was a different circumstance and there were
That
different.
said, you know,
products
we have
available.
on some of our scenic byways, you know, scenic roads, we have, you know, chain link fence that's down, that looks terrible, that is a terrible detriment to animal crossings. Across the street from me, there's some very old, you know, wire fence that is the kind that is the worst kind for large mammals to get caught in. And, you know, I think that those are the sorts of things we want to dissuade
about the turn.
without dissuading these sort of things like, you know, farming or, you know, a pretty fence for a tennis court or whatever. You know, most of my concern with this one is philosophical. I like bylaws that are realistic because I don't want folks to feel that we can ignore bylaws that we don't like. And yet this one is one we have to ignore because it's so dumb, you know, the way it's written. And I just think that like folks like us shouldn't be able to ignore our bylaws. And I don't mean that it's us specifically. I just think in general, we need to make sure they reflect a realistic use in town so that people don't think, oh, then I can ignore that bylaw or that bylaw. There shouldn't be a lot of flexibility. We have to have laws, and these are our laws. So let's make sure the laws reflect a reasonable way to, you know, kind of go forward.
Right, well, we hope that we can do that.
Yeah.
And I mean, unfortunately, that didn't work for the off-street parking bylaw, where we're just trying to make it reasonable
Yeah.
in terms of reflecting reality. That didn't happen. So, I mean, again, these all have to be voted on and
Yeah, no, I understand.
discussed. But I thought, well, this is a good place to start, and I don't disagree with you in that I think methodically, we probably should be going through and taking a look at what we've got. Does it make sense? Is it archaic? Or how do we better write it to make it clear?
Yeah.
But
So I think that perhaps you should talk to Bill as the two chairmen and figure out on this one whether they would like to play the lead or this board would like to play the lead. That would be my suggestion.
oh, yeah, we can
And
do that.
come up with a list of.
I mean, we have the
For our
consultant.
next annual town meeting or special town meeting.
Right. I mean, just,
And most of them be minor
right,
wording and just, or deletions or,
right. Or if
We'll
they
not
want
be
the
writing.
consultant to be working on this kind of thing
Yeah,
on a part-time basis.
we have one, I think.
Right. So anyway, there you go. I think that there's a need to change this and I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a process that we're going to have to go through. All righty.
That's all I got.
Okay. Do we have any questions from anyone out there?
We lost
Boy,
almost half of them since we started.
awful quiet group tonight. Well, assuming.
Are there any hands up?
Unless
Hold on,
either
let's
of
see
you
if
have
there's-
something else to say. No, there's no hands up. I'm on.
Oh, okay.
And you're not supposed to be on your phone, remember?
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
I'll second. All those in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks.
Thank you.